Hey, this is Aiden with Workman Firearms. Today, we're going to be disassembling and cleaning the Glock 48. Now, before I go into disassembling and cleaning, I'm going to go over all the materials you're going to need to successfully clean this firearm. Let's get to it. So some things you're going to need: CLP, some type of lubricant, a solvent, type of gun cleaner. This is going to help break down all the carbon or any type of debris. Some gun patches, a punch rod with a bore brush, some Q-tips. You don't need it, but they are beneficial. Microfiber towel. I like to use this. It doesn't leave any of those tiny little fibers around. You can use a regular towel, not a big deal, but it just might leave more debris. And then a paper towel. Now, before we come up to any firearm, we're always going to clear it. Remove that source ammunition, and then lock the slide to the rear. Physically and visually inspect that chamber. Inspect your magazine well. One last time, physically and visually inspect that chamber. Alright, your firearm's clear. Press in your trigger with the overhand grip. Grasp your slide and pull it 1/8 inch to the rear. Pull down on your slide lock. Push your slide forward. It's going to break down into two separate components. From here, you can remove the recoil spring assembly and then remove the barrel. I'm going to take these two, I'm going to put in my little parts container. And from here, we're going to start cleaning the firearm. Now, what I like to do first is I like to take my solvent and spray down my slide and my lower. And I'm just going to let that sit there. From here, I'm going to work on my recoil spring assembly and my barrel. Spray it all down with some solvent. Now from here, while I'm working my barrel, I'm going to take my punch rod and my chamber brush. I'm going to punch the bore. You're going to be punching from chamber to muzzle. This is going to help break up all that carbon inside that rifling. Do it a couple times, break up all that carbon. Now once you're satisfied, you're going to grab a 9mm jag or an eye loop. And from here, we're going to start pushing through the gun patches. So I put that 9mm jag on my punch rod. I'll take a gun patch. I'll spray it with some solvent. I'll set it right on the chamber. I'm going to be punching it chamber to muzzle. As you can see, it's pretty dirty. I'm going to repeat this process until you don't see any carbon anymore and those gun patches start to come out clean. If you want to, just to save your gun patches, you can reuse them. Just continue to repeat that process until those gun patches come out nice and clean. Just like this one. Now once you've run the gun patches with solvent through, you're going to want to just run some dry gun patches through. Just run 2 or 3 through. Make sure they're not coming out with any carbon on them. Alright, those gun patches are nice and clean. Now I'll take my microfiber towel. I'm just going to wipe down that barrel. I'm just going to place that in my nice clean pile. Now from here we're going to work on that recoil spring assembly. Take your nylon brush. Brush it around. And then I'm just going to wipe this one off as well. And if you have an air compressor or like keyboard air, you can always spray these out. Those are really nice. Once you're satisfied, place that in your clean pile. Now we're going to be working on the slide. Get that nylon brush. Start breaking up any type of carbon that's inside. Make sure you really focus on the face of that bolt there. Now for this, I don't like using a towel just because you can't really see how dirty the firearm is, especially with a towel that's been used a couple times. So I'm going to use that nice paper towel so you can actually see the carbon coming off. Or you can use gum patches. And you're just going to wipe down that slide and get all that solvent off. Now from here, I'm just going to get a Q-tip and get in those tight crevices along the slide rails. Get that face of the bolt again. Get an extractor. Once you're satisfied, you're going to place that in the clean pile. Now lastly, we're going to start wiping down that lower. Get a new paper towel or a rag and get all that carbon off, or solvent, carbon off. And the lowers are really good if you have like an air compressor. Alright, then place that in the clean pile. Now once you've cleaned all that solvent, all the carbon off the firearm, now just like any car, like before you would drive a car, obviously you'd make sure that there's oil in the engine. It's the same exact thing when you're talking about firearms. They need to be relubricated. So make sure you apply some oil. Rule of thumb is always apply light dose of oil to any shiny areas, or areas where you see constant friction or wear and tear. Springs especially as well. So I like to hit my springs. I'll hit each side of the rail. Remember, you do not need to over lubricate these. You have to understand also, the more lubricant you use, the more dust it will attract and the more carbon it also attracts. So always a nice layer of lubricant, but you don't want to overdo it. Put a couple drops on that recoil spring assembly. Put a few drops on that barrel. Just rub it in on that barrel. Okay, now the firearm has been relubricated. Now all we have to do is reassemble it. So in the reverse order, grab that barrel, slide that one right in. It'll drop right into place. Push it to the back. Get your recoil spring assembly. Using your thumb, apply downward pressure. It'll pop right into place. Grab your lower, line up your guide rails. Once it's seated, just like so, give it a nice rack. Now what we're going to do is function check it. Rack the slide once, press in the trigger, hold it to the rear. Rack the slide a second time while holding the trigger to the rear. Slowly release, listening for the reset. Alright, now we know that the firearm is fully functional and it's been entirely cleaned. Thank you. Please like and subscribe.